Ladies and gentlemen, President Trump just issued a very serious message to Zelenskyy, and frankly, this message pretty much changes the entire dynamic of the ongoing situation in Ukraine. So, folks, take a look at this video clip, then we are going to have a lot to talk about. Let it play.
Do you have a red line in your head of what would cause you to back away? And
yeah, in my head, but not something I'm going to announce. But yeah, definitely in my head I do, yeah.
Exactly would that look
because
like?
this isn't our war. This is not my war. This is not the war. I mean, we got ourselves entangled in something that we shouldn't have been involved in. And we would have been a lot better off, and maybe the whole thing would have been better off, because it can't be much worse. It's a real mess. It's a death trap.
Exactly.
So I think that, yeah, I would say I do have a certain line, but I don't want to say what that line is, because I think it makes the negotiation even more difficult than it is. Yes, please.
So, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. President Trump is absolutely fed up with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's negotiation games, declaring that the mess in Ukraine isn't even America's problem to begin with, and threatening to abandon the peace talks entirely. In truth, President Trump's message is completely on point, and it shows that he is done dealing with Zelensky's antics and that he's ready to walk away from this entire conflict that is, frankly, not even our problem. For those of you that have been following along with these negotiations, you know that President Trump's frustration with Zelensky's uncooperative stance is completely justified. In fact, just the other day, President Trump actually said that between Zelenskyy and Vladimir Putin, Zelenskyy is the more difficult leader to work with. Zelenskyy has proven to be unpredictable, belligerent, and disrespectful, with negotiation expectations that are completely out of touch with reality. And now, folks, we have a lot more to talk about here, but before we do, I want to say real quick that if you guys enjoy the daily news updates, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton. But okay, take a look at this. President Trump's decision to step back from the Ukraine-Russia peace talks really is a masterstroke protecting American resources that have been squandered on endless foreign conflicts for far too long. As many of you know, President Trump is prioritizing American lives, refusing to let U.S. soldiers spill their own blood in a Russia-Ukraine war that offers no benefit to our nation's prosperity. And so, President Trump's focus on domestic needs over Ukraine's demands showcases leadership that puts everyday Americans first, rejecting the globalist traps that do nothing other than bleed our country dry. But now, speaking of unreasonable demands coming from none other than Vladimir Zelenskyy, take a look at this. Zelenskyy has repeatedly said that in order for a peace deal to be achieved, Ukraine needs to be given long-term security assurances like NATO membership. What this effectively means is that Zelenskyy refuses to agree to a peace deal unless American soldiers are willing to put their lives on the line to defend Ukraine's borders, because that is exactly what Article 5 of the NATO Charter entails. The way NATO works is that if any NATO member country is attacked, let's say North Macedonia, for example, that attack is viewed as a direct attack on all of the other NATO member countries as well. Seriously, per the NATO Charter, we're supposed to believe that any attack on North Macedonia is the exact equivalent of a direct attack on Boston, for example. The entire concept is ridiculous and completely antithetical to the principles that this nation was founded upon, but this is exactly what Zelenskyy wants. And so, folks, this right here is the red line in the sand that President Trump is talking about. He's not going to do it. The facts are very clear. President Trump's rejection of Zelenskyy's NATO demands ultimately shield American lives from being dragged into a potential war with Russia. And you know what? I'll tell you guys something else that the mainstream media doesn't want you all to know. In many cases, the Ukrainian military is composed of numerous semi-autonomous militia groups that work semi-independently with or without Zelenskyy's explicit approval, which means that a peace deal is almost impossible. And the reason why is because, in large part, Zelenskyy doesn't even have complete unilateral control of his own military. And so this is what President Trump has come to realize, and this is why President Trump is looking to abandon the situation altogether. It's entirely possible that even if Zelenskyy were to issue a stand down order in the midst of a ceasefire or a peace deal being negotiated, that various militia groups in the Ukrainian military wouldn't even acknowledge the order and would just keep on fighting. You can't have a peace deal if one side of the equation doesn't even really have a leader. And so President Trump's willingness to walk away from these negotiations altogether is just yet another example of him fulfilling his promise to put America first. He's not about to let a foreign leader like Zelenskyy manipulate U.S. foreign policy for their gain. And here's the truth. President Trump's disengagement from Ukraine pressures Zelenskyy to pursue realistic negotiations rather than rely on American military intervention, which is really what Zelenskyy wants. If it were up to him, young American soldiers would be sitting in a ditch in eastern Ukraine right this very moment, getting blown up by artillery shells. So the reality is, the stance that President Trump has taken here defends American interest against all of these globalist schemes that seek to entrap the United States in more never-ending foreign wars, ensuring that American prosperity isn't wasted on territorial disputes that are halfway around the world. The 2024 election was very clearly a referendum on whether or not the American people want to continue spending American money and American lives on never-ending foreign conflicts that really we have no business being involved with in the first place. And as you all know, Americans overwhelmingly said no, enough is enough. And so that mandate is President Trump's guiding principle as he navigates all of these foreign conflicts and geopolitical issues. If America can help bring peace through diplomacy, that's great, but we are done wasting American resources on foreign conflicts. And hey, as my grandfather used to say, you can take a horse to water, but you sure as hell can't make it drink. And in this scenario, Zelenskyy is the horse, which is why President Trump is done. I think we can all agree that President Trump has done every single thing he can to help de-escalate this entire situation in Ukraine, and the crazy thing is, it's not even his responsibility to do so. The truth is, he inherited a mess that the Democrats' incompetent leadership ultimately created, and as President Trump likes to say, this entire situation wouldn't have even happened in the first place had the 2020 election gone a little bit differently. And so, despite his best efforts, like we said a moment ago, you can't make a horse drink water if it doesn't want to drink the water. And so now it's time to just walk away entirely. And so, folks, I don't know about you, but hey, in my opinion, this is exactly what it means to put America first. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we wrap up, I do want to say real quick that we officially have a Morse News Twitter page as well as a Morse News Facebook page. So if you use either of those platforms, please go down below and drop a follow in order to get breaking news updates that relate to everything we talk about here in the YouTube videos. But everyone, that is going to be a wrap for today's video, so please go down below and drop a comment. Let me know what you think about all of this. Please like the video while you're down there, and like I said earlier, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton. Thank you all very much for tuning in today, and of course, as always, stay safe.